This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. Tank and troop reinforcements from the Soviet Union and other Warsaw Pact countries are reported assembling tonight in East Germany, not far from the Polish border. East Germany says these fresh troops are part of a joint Warsaw Pact military exercise and are being prepared, quote, for a surprise attack against a strong grouping of the enemy. In these extended war games, the enemy supposedly is a fictitious opponent, but it also could be the leadership of Poland's Communist Party, a leadership unable to control a threatening labor rebellion. A tough warning to that leadership to put its house in order was delivered today in Prague by Czech party boss Gustav Husak. Tom Fenton is there.
It was the strongest warning to date by a Warsaw Pact leader. Husak compared Poland with Hungary, East Germany, and his own Czechoslovakia, communist states where Russian troops have intervened in the past. While Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev looked on, Husak warned the West that the Warsaw Pact countries, individually and collectively, are determined to defend their interests and ensure that Poland remains communist and a member of the Soviet bloc. Husak said the political crisis in Poland was intensifying, but gave no hint of whether a decision to intervene in Poland is imminent. His strong statement, which amounted to a public endorsement of the Soviet Union's right to use force in Poland, may partially explain Brezhnev's unexpected decision to attend an otherwise routine affair such as the Czechoslovakian Communist Party Congress. Ever since Russian troops intervened here in 1968, Czechoslovakia has been one of the Soviet Union's most docile allies. There are reported to be 5 Soviet divisions in the country, in addition to Czechoslovakia's own troops, and at least part of this force would be likely to participate in an invasion of Poland. Although Brezhnev's reasons for coming here are still not completely clear, it seems likely that his visit is part of an orchestrated campaign to put increasing pressure on the Polish Communist Party. The speech Brezhnev is expected to make here tomorrow should throw more light on the Soviet Union's intentions. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Prague.
The official line in the Soviet press is that Poland is undergoing creeping counter-revolution and that the anti-socialist elements have Western support. It's a line repeated, unsurprisingly, by ordinary Soviets when they talk about events in Poland. But the politics of it all is not their main concern. Most Soviets emphasize what they see as the high cost of supporting the Poles, people long regarded here as having the better life anyway. There is a feeling that Soviet support not only is unappreciated, but contributes to shortages here. The result is anger and resentment. A typical comment is, "We work hard and have little to show for it. The Poles have shorter working hours and go on strike, but they still get our meat and potatoes." On Poland, as on other foreign policy issues, the Soviet people back their leaders fully. But some young people privately are expressing apprehension that a military move into Poland, coupled with a large Soviet presence in Afghanistan, may mean an increased army call-up. Says an engineer who recently completed 2 years army service, "They tell us we were needed to defend socialism, but what we really would be doing is work the Poles should be doing themselves." Gordon Josoloff, CBS News, Moscow.
The tense situation in and around Poland has brought stern warnings by American officials, among them Defense Secretary Weinberger. The Soviet Party newspaper Pravda today responded to this, accusing Weinberger of, quote, making unmitigated noise and of fueling international tension. But Weinberger, on a week-long West European tour, kept up his attack today. We have reports from Ike Pappas, who is traveling with Weinberger, and from Diane Sawyer at the State Department.
Weinberger said the steady flow of Soviet reinforcements and extra combat supplies into Poland continues unabated, and in a sense, the invasion of Poland may have already started. A subtle assault, he said, aimed at pressuring dissident Polish labor leaders to give up their struggle for more freedoms.
The problem here all along has been that it's very hard to tell whether there's going to be a standard conventional type invasion, so to speak, or invasion by osmosis, in which there's a gradual filtering in, additions to the divisions that have already been in, Russian divisions that have been in Poland for a long time. The whole activity can't fail but be very intimidating and coercive, and And that's what I think its intent is.
The Soviets have always had 2 tank divisions inside Poland, but another 30 infantry and armored divisions are based in the 3 Soviet military districts that border Poland. They contain more than 300,000 troops. After leaving England, Secretary Weinberger flew to Bonn, West Germany, for tomorrow's NATO nuclear meetings, during which the Defense Secretary hopes to shore up support among the Allies for the placing of new battlefield missiles in Europe. But the Polish crisis is expected to dominate these talks. The NATO allies have to first determine what constitutes an invasion, by osmosis or otherwise, and then to decide what to do about it. As one senior defense official put it, it would be fine if the Soviets sent out a notice which says they've invaded, but they don't do things that way. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Bonn.
State Department analysts say they don't know where the Secretary of Defense got his information. They say some Soviet troops have been moved into Poland, but the number is so small it doesn't make that much difference. And the State Department spokesman compounded the confusion by switching his assessment of Soviet intentions today. Last Friday, he hinted Soviet intervention could be imminent. Today, he said, it's not so imminent after all.
But we do not believe that a Soviet intervention in Poland is likely in the immediate future. But we are seriously concerned about the threatening military and propaganda posture the Soviet Union has taken.
Dias defined the immediate future as the next few days. Then, for the first time, the State Department spokesman ruled out any U.S. military response to Soviet intervention.
There are no military options under active review.
State Department officials say their new, more relaxed assessment is based on 2 calculations. That as long as Brezhnev remains in Prague, no major Soviet decisions will be made. And second, U.S. intelligence information that despite the Soviet military buildup, the Soviet troops have not been positioned for deployment. U.S. officials do still worry that the Soviets may yet decide to invade Poland, but one official said, "We've decided not to talk about it so much. We're now afraid all our clamor about intervention could force the Soviets' hand." Diane Sawyer, CBS News at the State Department.
Concern over the situation in Poland boosted the value of the American dollar and gold on foreign money markets today, and that same concern contributed to a sharp drop in the stock market today. Poland's labor rebellion has evoked fears by other Soviet bloc countries that the unrest will spread across their borders. In an apparent attempt to head off any such trouble, Romanian President Ceausescu today called for a shorter work week and proposed measures that would make Romania's trade unions more autonomous. But he cautioned that labor leaders, quote, should act through party members inside the unions, that the Communist Party remains Romania's leading force.
Since the time of Caesar, vinifera grapes have created the world's finest wine. Riuniti selects the Marani, Salamino, Maestri, Monterico, and most important, the Lanciolotta, which only Riuniti grows to perfection. These choice grapes and centuries of the winemaker's art produce the delicious taste of pure and natural Riuniti, America's best-loved imported wine. Riuniti on ice.
I got my John Deere lawn and garden tractor the same year my son Eddie was born. They sort of grew up together. And I'll tell you, over the years, I've had more problems with Eddie than I've ever had with that tractor. John Deere builds them tough and solid. And your John Deere dealer is a man you can count on to keep them running year after year. Or you may pay a little more for a John Deere, but they'll last. I'm not so sure about Eddie.
President Reagan is continuing to show minor fluctuations of temperature, and doctors have increased antibiotic medication. But generally, he is said to be making a good recovery from his attempted assassination. Bill Plant reports.
The president continues to have what the White House calls moderate temperature elevations, though his doctors say that there is absolutely no evidence of an infection. Mr. Reagan's temperature, described by a spokesman earlier today as under 100 degrees, is apparently caused by debris which is clearing up slowly along the path of the bullet through his lung. Nevertheless, he continues to exercise periodically, taking walks, and visitors today described him as being in excellent spirits.
He's doing terrific, just terrific. We just talked about feeling good and the fact that bullets are not friendly things, and that was about the extent of it.
Vice President George Bush, officiating at the annual ceremony proclaiming Law Day May 1st, talked of the nation's problem with crimes of violence.
Violent crime is the uncivilized shout that threatens to drown out and ultimately silence the language of liberty. The events of last Monday were a tragic reminder as the violent act of one man sought to hush the voice of the nation as to who its leader would be.
Security around Mr. Reagan is certain to be tightened in the wake of the assassination attempt. CBS News has learned that death threats against the president, which typically increase in the wake of such an attack, have gone up 300% in the past week. Among the recommendations certain to be made by the White House and the Secret Service, that Mr. Reagan no longer stop in public to answer reporters' questions. That is, assuming that the reporters are even still within earshot. Bill Plant, CBS News, the White House.
Former Alabama Governor George Wallace, himself the target of an assassination attempt, said in a television appearance today, "When the President of the United States is not safe, no man is safe wherever you go." As if to underscore those comments, a scholar and researcher today said this country is in the midst of a strangers killing strangers murder wave unmatched since the Prohibition era. Temple University sociologist Margaret Zahn, who headed a national study of homicide, said, "Certainly the fact that we are a gun-carrying society is one reason why we have one of the highest murder rates in the world. However," she went on to say, "I don't think it's the whole reason, because in some periods, people are more willing to use guns than at another period." Zahn said, "I suspect that modern homicides are particularly related to higher unemployment and fear, similar to the situation during the Depression."
Starting now, only one traveler's check offers you exclusive news services that protect more than just your money, because lots of things can go wrong on a vacation.
We have no money, no traveler's checks, no credit cards, nothing.
Shouldn't we get back to the hotel?
We just came from there.
Do we know anybody here?
Not a soul. Lots of things can go wrong on a vacation. That's why American Express introduces the best vacation protection of any traveler's check. Now, if you lose your credit cards and ID along with your traveler's checks, American Express will help you cancel your credit cards, issue a temporary ID, even cash a check for up to $200. And if the loss affects your travel plans, you'll have our travel service at your service 24 hours a day. Only American Express offers all this extra protection at no extra cost. So be sure you ask for American Express traveler's checks. Now they protect more than just your money. Now they help protect your vacation.
The Reagan administration moved today to aid the beleaguered U.S. auto industry by easing pollution and safety regulations. In a statement from the White House, the president said the industry must solve its own problems, but the government must not unnecessarily hamper its efforts. Leslie Stahl has details.
The changes involve relaxing, postponing, or simply eliminating 34 different auto pollution and safety regulations as a way of aiding the nation's auto industry, which lost more than $4 billion last year, forcing nearly 400,000 people out of work. In addition to relaxing several different emission standards, the changes include postponing a requirement for airbags and automatic seatbelts due on large cars this coming fall, reducing a rule that bumpers must withstand collisions from 5 to 2.5 miles an hour, and eliminating a regulation that cars come equipped with a warning signal for low tire pressure. The administration claims these regulatory changes will save the industry $1.4 billion over the next 5 years and save consumers about $150 a car. Moreover, Transportation Secretary Drew Lewis rebutted charges that the changes will result in more injuries and deaths on the nation's highways.
Every item which we have outlined, we think that the safety benefits are negligible, or we would have not put them in this program. And exactly the same standards apply in clean air.
Several insurance companies and former Carter administration officials disagree, saying the changes will result in more injuries.
The reduction in lives, the increase in the number of injuries are being traded off for the savings, very minimal savings in dollars to the industry.
Claybrook also disputes the claim that consumers will benefit. The administration says that the large automakers have indicated their intention to pass the savings on to their customers, but there's no formal agreement binding them to do so. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
House Democrats today produced their alternative to the Reagan budget cut plan. George Herman has our report.
House Budget Committee Chairman Jim Jones's proposal, given the Democratic leadership's blessing by Majority Leader Jim Wright, is based on President Reagan's budget request, but only after that request is adjusted by the Democratic staff of the Budget Committee according to their own more pessimistic economic assumptions. Republicans angrily insisted on comparing the Jones figures with the original requests by the president. The Jones plan calls for more spending in 1982 than the president's original request and a considerably smaller tax cut. The result is a deficit of $24.6 billion compared with the president's original $45.2 billion, and a balanced budget in 1983, a year earlier than the president suggested. Jones would restore cuts in vocational education, manpower training, some welfare programs, and some health programs. He proposes a combination tax cut and tax reform program which would cut federal revenues by about $30 billion instead of the $50+ billion cuts suggested by the president.
Budget Director Stockman, clearly concerned at the impact of the Jones proposal on the Democratic House, called it an artful package. But he said it is inconsistent with the president's program and is unacceptable. George Herman, CBS News, the Capitol.
The Supreme Court ruled today that a man who quit his job because of his religious beliefs is entitled to unemployment pay, which normally goes only to workers who are laid off. The case involves a Jehovah's Witness in Indiana. His employer transferred him from a steel foundry to a plant making turrets for military tanks. He quit, but when he applied for jobless pay, it was denied. An industry spokesman, members of Congress, and flight attendants today lined up to ground a Federal Aviation Administration proposal released on the Carter administration's last full day in office. The rule changes for some flights would require at least one flight attendant for each 50 passengers aboard flights instead of for each 50 seats. A spokesman for the airline industry, which first sought the change, today suggested it needs more study. And 5 cabin attendants who survived crashes or other emergencies said the personnel reduction would be a safety hazard. Representative John Burton said the proposal reflects a mistaken impression that flight attendants are hostesses and cocktail waitresses.
Information. Business is besieged by it. All kinds of equipment have been required to manage it. Until now. Now, with Wang's new integrated information system, one person very simply can perform data processing, word processing, high-speed image printing, and worldwide communication. If Wang can create all this today, who knows what the future holds? Wang, making the world more productive.
When you spread on Glidden, you get something beautiful to show for it.
Frank gave me a beautiful painting for my birthday.
Rembrandt?
No, Glidden. Do you always use the high-quality spread?
Of course. Glidden.
Oh! Once I was the center of attention at my parties. Then I painted the walls with Glidden.
Glidden, when you make a very good paint, it shows.
Heavy street battles in Beirut today between Lebanese Christian militia and Syrian forces shattered the 16th ceasefire in 6 days of fighting. At dusk, when fighting normally slackens, a 17th ceasefire was declared between the Syrians, who are in Beirut ostensibly for peacekeeping purposes, and Lebanese army regulars. 154 persons have been killed and 500 have been wounded in the fighting since last week. It is this carnage in Lebanon and the threat that Israel may be forced to side with its Lebanese Christian allies that has preoccupied Secretary of State Haig's current tour of the Middle East. Robert Pierpoint is traveling with Haig.
At the close of their talks, Israel's Prime Minister Begin predicted closer cooperation with the United States, and Secretary Haig reinforced that prediction by revealing a view very close to that of Israel on the fighting in Lebanon.
We view the brutality of the Syrian action against the Christian enclave as a very, very serious turn of events which is unacceptable, where we've taken a number of measures and some unprecedented measures in the last 48 hours. I'm very hopeful, though I am yet unable to express optimism that there will be a return to restraint and law and order and sanity.
Haig then flew on to Jordan, where reporters pressed another senior State Department official to explain those unprecedented measures. He revealed only that the U.S. government has contacted Syria, Saudi Arabia, the Soviet Union, and the Western Allies in an effort to halt the fighting in Lebanon. The official warned that pressure is building in Israel to stop the killing of Christians. He said the Israelis discussed this with us in very urgent terms, and he left the impression the U.S. might not oppose an Israeli move against the Syrians if the fighting continues. In his meeting with King Hussein tonight, Haig again discussed Lebanon, but had little to say about the matter he has emphasized in his previous stops, increasing Soviet penetration of this region. The king is not interested in that topic, believing instead that the greatest threat to Jordan's interest is Israel's continued occupation of the Palestinian West Bank. Dramatizing that point, Hussein, a longtime American ally, is making his first trip next month to the Soviet Union. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Amman, Jordan.
In Atlanta today, a special police task force added the name of Larry Rogers to its list of missing and murdered young blacks, bringing the total to 25. Police said the 21-year-old Rogers has the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. They said he was last seen March 30th when he climbed into a car driven by a black man with a thick, false-looking mustache. The Federal Communications Commission reached a decision today that can raise long-distance telephone rates up to 17%. The FCC voted to let American Telephone and Telegraph Company realize a profit between 12.5% and 13%. AT&T's current profit margin allowed by the FCC is 10.5%.
Welcome to the Buick School of Performing Arts and its most distinguished graduate, the Buick Riviera T-Type. With front-wheel drive, four-wheel independent suspension, almost every power assist imaginable standard. And for power, a highly sophisticated turbocharged V6 engine. Buick's Riviera T-Type, a real driver's education. Classes start at your Buick dealers now.
Mom, he's putting A1 steak sauce on his hamburger.
My dear nephew, what is hamburger? Chopped ham? No, it's chopped steak. And what's better on steak than A1? A1 makes hamburgers taste like steak burgers. Take a bite. A1's herbs and spices blend with the meat's natural juices.
Delicious.
Sure.
It's really juicy and tastier. Best hamburger you'll ever have. Because it's a steak burger.
Hey, your uncle's steak burger.
A1 makes hamburgers taste like steak burgers.
This is the law of the Yukon, where only the strong survive. No matter how remote the hamlet, television has arrived. Well, Robert W. Service, the laureate of the Northern Lights, didn't quite put it that way. But television's electronic umbrella now covers Alaska, a state so big it contains 4 time zones, and so small it harbors fewer people than Columbus, Ohio. And as Terry Drinkwater reports, the debate is whether television's arrival is a blessing or a curse.
Place them under arrest. This is a frame-up.
The TV's on in there, here in Fort Yukon, and the Alaska natives are surely watching. Television has come to the bush, to the tiny Indian and Eskimo villages of the Arctic, to the most remote places in the whole of the United States, and it has changed them. The pictures arrive from a satellite in the sky to Earth stations, 82 of them, in some places where no more than 100 people live. The state spends $2.5 million a year to bring television to communities too small and too isolated for commercial stations. Happy viewing? Yes and no.
Today we have TV in Fort Yukon, and it's, people aren't communicating with each other. They're going to each other's house and watching TV together.
For those growing up, television means culture shock. Most every day, they trap and hunt in the way of their forefathers, learning subsistence living. And then, at night, TV and another world.
You're not going to marry her, are you, BJ?
What makes you want to grow out and see it for yourself?
Do you think television makes young people leave the bush?
Yes.
What is comedy, fantasy, mystical nonsense to viewers in the lower 48 is perceived very differently here, and it is confusing.
When you bring it into the homes, then, you know, some of that mysticalness is gone, and people see it as real phenomenons.
They become valid and, and real and truth.
Right.
Anthropologist Rosita Whirl, herself a native, is studying the impact of TV in the bush, particularly on the young. The schools stress English over Athabasca, and now the tube.
When you're spending 3 to 5 hours a day watching TV that's spoken in English, that's a negative influence on their native languages.
Yet she sees positive values in television as well.
Our program is aimed not only at reducing the budget.
Faraway government seems closer. And there's educational TV 8 hours during the day. Alcoholism, common in Alaska's native villages ever since the white man came, has been reduced by the high viewing hours.
Television has in some cases taken the place of the booze bottle. It may have prevented some family problems, wife beating, rapes, those kinds of awful tragedies that seem to be running rampant here in the state.
When night falls, not everyone goes home to the tube. You'll likely find Fort Yukon's mayor chatting in the village store.
To my belief, you know, it's destroying our culture.
Do you think because of that, maybe they should turn the switch and say no more television?
I'd go for that tomorrow, today. You know, I believe that.
To shut it off?
Yes.
So what are you going to do?
I'm going to move further north.
Really?
But you can't go. Where can you move? Because television is coming to all the villages. You know.
Indeed it is, for better or worse.
What would I have to do to get
Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Fort Yukon, Alaska.
That's our report for this Monday. Dan Rather, CBS News, New York. Good night.
We can tell by country mile, by your smile, you've got that brand new feeling.
Kellogg's gives it to you in more great ways than anybody. Like Kellogg's All Brand, no cereal gives you more fiber.
Yes, you've got it, and it shows by your smile, goodness knows.
Or Kellogg's 40% bran flakes with that wholesome wheat taste.
Get that brand new feeling, that Kellogg's brand new feeling.
When you switch from eyeglasses to sunglasses, you can make a spectacle of yourself. Not with new Photo Brown Extra lenses. Indoors, they're eyeglasses. Outdoors, they change to sunglasses in less than 60 seconds. Corning lenses that change in new fashion brown and gray. Because one pair of glasses can look better than two.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. This is CBS.
Pearl and Cone High Schools will be closed next year under an interim desegregation plan okayed today by a federal judge. Details coming up next on Eyewitness News.
Seems like there's a lot of rushing around going on these days with that interstate and all. Guess that's why it's so nice there's a place like the Cracker Barrel Old Country Store. Nothing fancy here. A few antiques and things from the past. A nice gift shop to browse through. And best of all, a whole lot of good country cooking.